Hey, we are back with our part 2 of our tour of York County presidents who have came to York County. The title of this episode is When LBJ Came to Dallastown and Other Stories of Presidential Visits. Please make sure to go watch our part 1 of this episode. But now we're going to launch right into part 2 and start with LBJ. Before we do that, really quick though, some takeaways. If you missed the first one, you'll learn today. One is that Pennsylvania was a swing state, and that is the reason why a lot of delegates prioritize us. Second, York County attracts some of the most powerful men in the world because of our industrial might and our geographical proximity. And finally, you'd think that out of all the presidents who visited that it would spark division, but it did quite the opposite. It brought us together. Now let's get into LBJ.
Right. So LBJ and his wife Lady Bird, which I love that nickname, gave the keynote address at the Dallastown 100th anniversary in 1966. And he thanked Dallastown because of his connection to Texas, which was his home state. Dallastown is named after George Dallas, and he was the vice president under President Polk's administration. Dallas wanted Texas in the Union, and he made it a focal point during the 1844 campaign. This ultimately helped Polk win the office, and Johnson said, incidentally, it also helped a later president who happened to come from Texas.
LBJ commented on Dallastown's people. He said, in the little town in Texas where I grew up, we used to say that in small towns, the girls are fonder and the dinner pails are fuller. I'll take it.
I like
That's
it.
a good compliment. I'll
it.
take that. Yep. Like we said earlier, so I'm from Dallastown. So this for me, it hits home. I remember going to Dallastown area high school and walking to the pizza shops and just being a part of the community. And so we're happy to be back.
Life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so Johnson was also in Dallastown to stump for Democratic Congressman Neiman Crawley, who had gained the coveted seat in 1964 against incumbent George Goodling, and Johnson's work went for naught because Goodling regained his congressional seat in the general election.
Yes.
So he tried.
Yeah, stay tuned. We're going to interview a man who was alive and witnessed LBJ when he came through Dallastown. So stay tuned for our extra. We'll have another episode after this. Now let's get into Richard Nixon.
I love it. So Nixon brought his campaign to York in 1960 while trying to gain votes. So you'll notice a theme here. A lot of people come here campaigning. And it worked because he ended up beating Kennedy, 55,000 to 39,000 votes. And York wasn't a new place for Nixon. He had visited many times before after his parents moved to a farm in Mangus Mills in 1946.
So you can see some, if you watched our part 1, that York County seems to vote mostly conservative.
Yes.
Here's another example of where we voted for a Republican president. Growing up, I would go to Nixon Park, and I had no idea that this was connected to a president. Right. So when Bob Hoffman of York Barbell fame donated the land to the county park system, he had one stipulation, and that is that it was named after President Nixon. Now, this was in 1968 that it was donated, so this was before the Watergate scandal. This is a picture of Richard Nixon when he visited the county park named after him in 1988. He donated $5,000, and he continued to regularly donate until he died in 1994.
Is that a fruit basket, or what do we think that is?
I do.
It looks like apples,
It
maybe.
does look like. And
Maybe the York Imperial apple?
Maybe. That'd be cool. We can go and check that.
Yeah.
We also see in the foreground here Vonnie Grimes. He was a local academic administrator, and there is a gym named after him in downtown York called the Vonnie Grimes Gym.
Spent a lot of time watching my brother's volleyball tournaments
Oh,
there.
did you?
Yeah.
That's cool. Nice.
Even before I knew, his namesake. It was cool.
Yeah.
So that brings us to Gerald Ford. So he visited York College in 1979 when he was unofficially testing the waters for another presidential campaign. I know. And when nature called, he, along with 2 Secret Service agents, checked out the bathroom.
I love this story. This is so good.
We always tell like a fun bathroom story. Yeah, it's an outhouse. Usually it's an outhouse, but there they found Bill Walters, and he clearly didn't look threatening because Ford joined him at another urinal. Because when you're a president or a future president, your Secret Service sort of has to vet things, so you don't want to be in the bathroom next to, a secret assassin maybe.
But they didn't check Walters enough, apparently.
So as they were washing their hands at the same time, Walters looked up and said, I never thought I would have the privilege of sharing a men's restroom with the 38th president of the United States.
What would you say? Well, first off, okay, President Trump probably going into the bathroom probably isn't a good idea, but what if there was a female president and they came into the bathroom?
I don't know, I feel like girls in the bathroom just like chit chat. I feel like guys don't do that.
I think my jaw would drop to the ground.
Yeah, I mean, we're used to like girls go to the bathroom in packs,
Yeah,
and men don't really do that.
True. So how did Ford respond to this comment? Ford laughed, and then he ended up shaking hands, and then he left. When Walters went back to his table, no one believed him. They said the Secret Service would have kicked you out. They would have not have let you stay there in the bathroom. And so Walters actually wrote Ford a letter, and he said, hey, man, can you send me a personal note or an autographed picture that just kind of proves that we had this interaction? And what's cool is that Gerald Ford actually responded, and on the letter he wrote, even a former president does indeed have need of such facilities and does in no way find it beneath his dignity to make use of them at that time as that need arises.
Presidents, they're just like us.
It's also written so nicely, right?
It's a really formal way of saying, yeah, we use the bathroom at the same time.
Yeah, we pee next to each other.
Even presidents pee.
Yep. So now let's get into the president that we just lost, Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, so Georgia Governor Jimmy Carter visited Lewisberry in 1974. The late Bill Shintz, a photographer, noted that when Carter was leaving a rally at a barn, he made his bus driver stop. He exited to talk to a boy in a wheelchair, and he explained how he had a nephew just like him, and he requested to say a prayer with the boy. No one noticed in the crowd or on the bus, but it wasn't a publicity stunt, and he ended up doing it because he was a caring person, and if you know anything about him, he was a really religious person. And in fact, he was running late for his next stop, but he still made the time to do it. And if it wasn't for the late Bill Shintz, a photographer, the story would have never been captured.
Kind of cool.
It is really
behind
cool.
The scenes story.
Yeah, it's nice to know that these people are doing things not just for the public,
right,
but out of the kindness of their heart.
Right. One of America's most beloved presidents, Ronald Reagan, came to York as well. He visited the Harley-Davidson plant in 1987. Here's a picture of him. Fun fact, he did not get on the motorcycle.
They could have gotten him in a sidecar.
George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, so in 1988, George H.W. Bush visited York with his wife, Barbara Bush, and he gave a 20-minute speech at the Colonial Courthouse, and then he ended up coming back in 1992 for a political fundraiser. And in the first visit, Barbara Bush split off to tour Crispus Attucks Daycare Center.
Here's a picture of her.
That's a great picture.
Awesome?
Yeah.
Next up, we have Bill Clinton. So like Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton visited Harley-Davidson, and again, he did not get on the bike.
Why is everyone afraid of Harley? Come on.
This was in 1999. Before that, he actually visited back in 1992 while he was running for the presidency. There, when he arrived really late at night, he shook supporters' hands for about an hour and apparently collapsed after just a few hours of sleep. Yeah. While here, Bill went through a run through York City streets. Here's a picture of him right outside of the Yorktown Hotel, which is super cool. And then his wife and future presidential nominee Hillary Clinton visited Central Market. There she took a picture next to broccoli and a sign that said, let's bring broccoli back to the White House.
I love it.
So I first saw this picture and I was like, I don't get the context at all. Like, why is she talking about bringing broccoli back to the White House? But it turns out that George H.W. Bush had banned broccoli.
Didn't like broccoli.
From the White House. Yeah, he didn't like broccoli. But what's funny, apparently the broccoli farmers unionized and protested it.
I get it. It probably hurt broccoli
Heck
sales.
yeah.
Yeah. Broccoli is one of my favorite vegetables.
Is it?
As a vegetarian.
Okay. Next up, George W. Bush.
Yeah, so President George W. Bush came to York twice, once in 2004, where he went to the fairgrounds to motivate people to support the wars in the Middle East, and then he came back again in 2006, going Harley-Davidson here, where unlike the former presidents Reagan and Clinton, he got aboard the motorcycle, and he got it on camera. So there's proof that he rode the motorcycle.
It's a picture of him on a Harley-Davidson motorcycle.
The sunglasses really,
top it off.
Look. Yeah.
All right, next up, we have Barack Obama. So when he was a presidential candidate, he toured Voith Hydro Plant. This would have been in 2008. His wife, Michelle, went to the Strand Capitol earlier that year, and it had filled to capacity, completely booked.
Yeah.
After the election, York County Heritage Trust researchers discovered that a branch of Obama's ancestry actually came from York.
Wow.
In fact, Obama shares a common ancestor as LBJ.
Ooh.
His name was Philip Ament, and he joined the Continental Army in 1775. Obama is his sixth great-grandson, and Johnson is his third great-grandson.
I wonder if there's any DAR or SAR members that are members under that Patriot. They should.
Are you a part of the DAR?
I am.
Cool.
Yeah. The Meisenhelder clan out of Dover.
Very fun.
Yeah. So if you're related to them, put it in the comment section. Now we go to a recent visit with Donald Trump. President Trump visited Precision Custom Components while running for the 2024 election. Routes 83 and 30 were shut down to allow his motor brigade to speed from York to Harrisburg Airport, which he did in less than 30 minutes, which is amazing because, there's no traffic, but try that on a regular rush hour.
Well, I had some friends who were stuck on the highway for hours.
I know. There was a few people that texted me that they were leaving work and they were like, why is everything shut down? Is there a wreck? I was like, well, when the president comes to town.
Yeah, everything else is shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, we have Joe Biden. He came to the Alexander Good School in 2011, where he talked to a bunch of fourth graders, and then he came back in 2012, where he went to West York High School to talk to the teenagers.
And that brings us to takeaway number 1. We love our takeaways. So since Pennsylvania is always a swing state going back and forth between Republican and Democrat, campaigning presidents make visiting us a major priority. And then takeaway number 2, York County has attracted arguably the most powerful people in the world because we make a lot of things here and we're close to a lot of major cities. So we're a hub, honestly, in the industrial sector. And then number 3, more than 30 presidents and future presidents have visited York County over the years. During their visits, you'd think maybe it would spark division, but it really didn't. It brought us all together.
So hopefully you learned something today. Our next episode is actually a really fast turnaround. We are going to be airing it next week on February 3rd, talking about Lafayette. The title is Fighting Frenchmen Lafayette's Brief Visits Left Long Legacy in York County. Dami and I will be at, right now, Continental Square, filming live.
Weather
permitting.
Yes.
But stay tuned. We are going to have our extra here with some fascinating folks from the Dallastown Historical Society and someone who witnessed LBJ firsthand when he came to Dallastown.
Thanks for watching.